Democrats reject diversity of thought and the dumbest bill in America. This is Mark Fisher with Mark and the Millennials, and our millennials are Andrew the Fooge Fujaniti and Ryan the Squirrel Brady and our producer Adam Couture. They're all here. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
That's right. Thank you, Squirrel. Look, it's the 30th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square uprising in China. And one of the things I remember during this uprising in 1989 was that there was this guy called Tank Man, and Tank Man stood in front of a tank, and the person driving the tank, who obviously was in the military, decided that they were not going to run this protester over, and that was an extraordinary thing. Now, of course, 30 years later, we look back and we think about have there been any improvements? And has there been any kind of disclosure about what happened, how many people died, and so forth? We actually have a clip on this. It's pretty extraordinary, and it's worth hearing because it tells us a lot about socialism and communism. And here it is.
I have seen my fellow students crushed beneath tanks. I had seen people whose only crime was calling for a democratic future, shot and killed just 3 feet away from me.
So that was, of course, an eyewitness who spoke at a TED Talk, and he basically told the college students, about what he witnessed. And the fact that still to this day, there hasn't been any kind of real transparency in China or admission as to what happened. In fact, if you tried to do an online search in China, interestingly enough, you'll find nothing about the Tiananmen Square incident, which is really interesting. Guys, thoughts on this? Because millennials, you weren't alive when this event happened.
And I've said it before in multiple podcasts. I think like the fact that we weren't alive is why it's so popular now amongst our generation. But I mean which
is why socialism is popular, right?
Yes,
and communism.
Correct. Yeah, and I guess you could look through history and say anytime communism has been implemented, socialism was used as the economic strategy, right? So
absolutely.
But that clip was pretty fascinating because basically what he's saying is they were protesting in favor of a democratic China, and socialism and communism was against diversity of thought and saying, well, nope, this is the way we're going to be doing it, and anyone who thinks differently than us, this is what happens to you.
Yeah, because we can't have diversity of thought in the Democrat Party. We can't have diversity of thought in the Communist Party in China either. What do you think, Squirrel?
So the key difference between the Chinese and us is we don't shy away from our bad moments as a country and as a people. They do. They'll put you in jail. They'll re-educate you. They'll watch your social credit score, which is a facial recognition system they're testing out against the Uyghurs. Playback. Squirrel.
Yeah, but those are the Muslims in China, and they speak a Turkic language. I was reading about them, and apparently there are 1 million of them. That many of them are in re-education camps.
Yep.
Which is, of course, communism. They're trying to indoctrinate them into the ideology of communism.
And we see now as China evolves itself, they're adopting pseudo-capitalistic tendencies because they're trying to get that economic generation going. But you still, as living as a person, you're not necessarily free. There's always Big Brother watching. Very Orwellian right now.
Absolutely. And, the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo urged China to make a full public accounting of those killed or missing from the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. And Chinese Foreign Minister spokesman Geng Shuang shot back with a comment to, of course, Mike Pompeo. The Chinese Foreign Minister said this: "These lunatic ravings and babbling nonsense will only end up in the trash can of history." So they don't care. They don't care because they think there's no accountability.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible to think that it's probably likely that there are people in China that don't know the truth behind Tiananmen Square and events like that, because not only did communism, when they expanded the growth of government control over everything, including socialism and all the branches of everything that happens in China is controlled by the government. I mean, they have the ability to completely control what people know and what they can share and what they think. It's scary.
Which is incredible because now, as a result of technology being so advanced now, unlike in 1989, now surveillance state can really be much more powerful than ever before. Mm-hmm. So they actually know what you're doing long before you even go out and protest, because you're protesting online, and they're going to come to your house and arrest you and send you to a re-education camp.
You got the Great Firewall, the social credit score, as again bringing that up again, and also just honestly, they're so thin-skinned. Honestly, if you get upset for someone saying, I didn't like that policy, and you decide to say, we're going to make your life a living hell, I don't really know if you should be the gleaming hegemon of the whole entire world.
So we talked about how the communists in China in 1989 at Tiananmen Square massacre.
See it in every single social studies book.
That's right. And they didn't tolerate diversity of thought because there were protests against the Chinese government and the one-party state rule. And then we also have the same problem in the United States with the Democratic Party because they don't want diversity of thought. They want diversity in any other way, but not diversity of thought. And proof to this point is Governor John Hickenlooper from Colorado.
Democrat.
He's a Democrat running for president of the United States, was booed for denouncing socialism. He was present at the California Democratic Convention in San Francisco, and he gave a speech because, of course, he wants to be president of the United States. So first he has to win the primary in the Democratic Party. Here is a clip. It's unbelievable. You have to hear it to believe it.
If we want to beat Donald Trump and achieve big progressive goals, socialism is not the answer. I was reelected.
Listen to those boos.
I was reelected
It's incredible.
in a purple state in 2014.
See? Purple state,
One of
bipartisanship.
the worst years for Democrats in a quarter century.
I mean, the Democrats might as well be inside of tanks running them over, like Tiananmen Square.
No, they don't. They wouldn't buy tanks. They'll buy Prius to run people over.
Achieve universal coverage by removing private
Prius.
insurance from over 150 million Americans.
Wouldn't get far.
We should not try to tackle climate change by guaranteeing every American a government job.
Wow.
Hold on.
It's incredible.
As the Democratic Party, we have to create a vision for this country. I want to give Americans a reason to look forward to tomorrow.
So here's a governor who dares to say something different, dares to talk about diversity of thought within the Democratic primary structure. And he does so. And he does so with great courage, to his credit, even though I probably would never vote for him and I don't agree with anything that he says. Maybe there's some things I agree with, I don't know. But he's just trying to get his point across, and he's being booed because, no, there's only one way of thinking. The Communist Party has spoken. Guys.
He was just trying to talk about his platform and wasn't even like saying, you know, I mean, granted, he was saying like he disagrees with socialism, but like, I guess the only thing that crowd would have accepted if he said, I'm out of the race and I support Bernie Sanders.
So look, I probably would never vote for him as president if he's on the Democrat Party ticket. But what he just said there, I don't find any fault with it. It's just insane. He's like saying, hey, socialism's not the answer. I'm from a purple state. I ran on a bipartisan-ish ticket. Granted, I don't maybe agree with his policies or national policies, but then again, what he said there should not get booed. That should be something everyone should aspire to, regardless of the policies he supports.
Yes,
like,
and
come on.
alternatively, of course, he could have said, I am for socialism. I am for communism. Everybody would go, yeah. I mean, can you imagine?
They're all about the class.
Crazy. This is crazy. This is the United States of America. We're talking about this just the day of the 30th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre, of course, where communism, a one-party state rule where you cannot have diversity of thought. And here you have the Democratic Party basically acknowledging this is what they want.
Yeah, if they want to go to socialism or, in some cases, communism in a sense, because there's some people out there in those camps, where has it worked once, where it does not adopt any capitalist tendencies or systems?
Yeah, what this crowd showed, if you don't get on board, with what they want their party to be, which is a party that accepts socialism as an economic driver for the country and as a blueprint for the country, then we don't want to hear what you have to say.
Exactly. And former Congressman John Delaney from the state of Maryland, also is running for president of the United States, and he spoke at the California Democratic Convention as well, and he dared to say things as well. Just like Governor John Hickenlooper, Delaney dared to say things that were against what the socialist folks who run the Democratic Party want. We have a clip on that. You have to hear it to believe it.
But we need, as Democrats, to build an economy that works. But it's got to be with smart policies. Medicare for all may sound good,
Which is
but
socialist.
it's actually not good policy, nor is it good politics. I'm telling you.
They're booing him.
I'm telling you.
Hit him with the chair.
100.
Wow. It's incredible.
Can't even speak, yeah.
We should have universal health care.
He tries to retract. And
No diversity of thought.
oh my God.
We should have universal health care. We should have universal health care. We should have universal health care, but it shouldn't be a kind of health care that kicks 150 million Americans off their health care.
That's half the country. Wow.
That's not smart policy.
Now they're booing that. If you want your plan, you can't keep your plan.
I bet they don't even know what they're booing about or behind everything.
I want everyone to have health care, but it's got to be a plan that works for every American.
They are like the seagulls from Finding Nemo.
No.
This
is called the battle of ideas, my friends.
You're not allowed to have the battle of ideas. See, you're not allowed to have the battle of ideas in the Democratic Party because they won't let you. There's only one way of thinking. It's the communist and socialist way. It's the Tiananmen Square way where there's a tank in front of you. You think our way or you are outside of the party.
Believe or
Forget
die.
it. Exactly. And did you hear what he said? He said throwing 150 million people off their private health care plan is not good policy. Well, of course, because a few years ago, we heard Barack Obama said, if you want your plan, you can keep your plan. Now they're saying, no, you can't keep your plan. You're going to take our way or the highway because we're the state, we're communists, we're socialists. It's our way or the highway. Guys.
They want your money in the pool of the everyone universal health care so it could support itself. But honestly, I prefer my private health care insurance. I'm very fortunate to have private health care. I'm not going to say, like, if some people that are poor or lower middle class, they might need state-supported some service welfare programs.
You're for choices, is what you're saying. You're for having choices, a menu.
One of the first candidates we hear actually talking about the policies that he believes in. He can't even talk about it. He tried. He just says one thing. He says, and he was going to explain himself. Mm-hmm. He had to try and say, I'm for universal health care like 3 times just to get him to be quiet, and it didn't work. Nope. And he's actually saying, like, look, this is bad policy because you can't there's a system in place right now, 150 million people that are on it, and it's working. Why would we just throw it out the window because we want to help other people?
Exactly.
No, my position on this thing, there should be a social safety net to a degree if it's managed right and not being overburdensome that we're seeing with where Social Security is overrunning its budget because, no offense, people aren't dying, but then again, it's like, it should be there, but it needs to be managed right and can't be the be-all, end-all where it's like, oh, if I don't have a job, I have all this to take care of and I can't improve myself.
Let's frame the argument. The argument is that do we need to make improvements to the private system? Yes. Do we need to make improvements to the public system? Yes. But what they want to do is to say, no, there should be only one choice of system. It's going to be the system that we force feed you, and that's the way it's going to be.
Where there's no accountability and, again, no choice.
Exactly, as always. And next we have Congressman Eric Swalwell, congressman from California. He's basically, I can't believe he's even running for president. I'm not even sure what made him run. Yeah. We don't have a clip on this because basically he has a fundraiser, and he did a video of a fundraiser, and it's just music to the fundraiser, so it wouldn't be helpful to listen to the music. And it's him, Congressman Eric Swalwell, changing his child's diaper, his baby's diaper. And in the middle of it, it says, well, if Swalwell can change, obviously the baby's, then, hey, he can clean up Washington and you should send him some money. I mean, can you imagine? Talk about vacuous.
It looked like a bad indie trailer remake of Mr. Mom.
Kind of. You know what it reminds me of? Have you seen the movie The Campaign with Will Ferrell and something?
Oh, I love that movie.
And his slogan is something like, "You gotta have your brooms because I'm gonna clean up Washington." That's what he's saying. He's like, I can clean diapers. Movie. I can clean Washington. Exactly. Like, I can clean little babies' butts, so I can clean Washington.
Right. No policy. Of course, he's already in Washington. By the way, he could have been cleaning it while he was there, but he's got to go back to California to clean the diaper.
You just gotta point it to like a leadership position.
He had to clean himself first to try to.
Exactly. I wish he had spoken to, and maybe he did, to the California convention because I didn't actually look up a clip on that, but maybe next time.
Probably for your good health.
And speaking of clips, we have AOC, Alexandria, composting and cauliflower. So apparently cauliflower is bad because I'm not really sure why. It's cultural appropriate. I'm not really sure. You guys got to explain this to me because here's the clip. I don't know what she's talking about.
So that's really how you do it right. That is such a core component of the Green New Deal, is having all of these projects make sense in a cultural context. When someone says that it's too hard to do a green space that grows yucca instead of...
Yucca!
I don't know.
I thought it was called yucca.
cauliflower or something.
There's Yucca Mountain.
Yucca
What
Mountain.
you're doing is that you're taking a colonial approach to environmentalism. And that is why a lot of communities of color get resistant to certain environmentalist movements because they come with a colonial lens on them. And it should be no surprise that that sometimes a lot of these projects don't work out occasionally.
So she recorded that while she was walking, thus the noise in the background, kind of the sounds and all that stuff. So we did as best as we could cleaning up that clip. But she's talking about colonialism and cauliflower and what, I don't know what she's talking about. Help me, millennials, because she's one of you. You're one of us. Tell us. Tell the boomers.
The more she talks about the Green New Deal, or I feel like every time she speaks, she says, and that's what the Green New Deal's about. I'm like, what is the Green New Deal? It's this all-encompassing thing. Now it has to do with the Green New Deal is everyone has to compost. Like, what?
I think it's more or less becoming a philosophy, the way you guys
Yeah.
think, where everything you do has an environmental cause and effect. Well, everything you do is a cause and effect.
But what about cauliflower? What is she talking about?
Where did cauliflower even come from? Did it originally come from Europe? I don't know. But also, I thought, certain plants grow in certain regions. Come on.
But apparently you can't grow cauliflower if you are Hispanic. I mean, I'm
yeah,
not really
she makes
sure.
it
Or
sound like
ethnic neighborhoods.
I don't know why that's a thing. Like, why? Yeah, that's what I was confusing about. She's saying like you can't just like force a certain type of vegetable on someone because they might not be culturally used
Or
to
their
it.
palates may
That's
not be used to
stupid.
it, which is like, come on.
I mean, I like spicy food, right? So I always have a garden, and I always grow the really spicy jalapeno peppers, and because I thought, so does that mean that I shouldn't be doing that now because I'm not Hispanic?
People are going to grow what they want to grow because of what they like. Honestly, we have the best. We take the best of every single culture that comes to as an immigrant community here, and we just incorporate to our own melting pot, basically.
This is the way that her mind works. I mean, she literally believes that the government knows best. She knows best. You can't just let people grow cauliflower if they're not used to it. The government should tell you, what foods are better for her and what not.
Yeah, and Adam's got something. Let's hear it, Adam.
We got a clip on that too.
Oh yeah, we do.
So the way that you do this right is that you don't kind of come into a community and impose what you think is right. That is
Who the hell's doing that?
So many community development projects get wrong, whether it's housing, whether it's environmental projects. What you need to do is plug in and find leaders in these communities and support them.
Wow.
So you can't tell people to do things in their communities, but isn't she telling us everything that we have to do with every aspect of our lives?
That's the whole premise of the Green New Deal. She literally wants everyone to follow these. I don't know what the guidelines are because they're constantly changing and evolving and amassing more things, but she's literally saying the government, we should pass the new Green New Deal and force these communities, although she just said she believes that, well, you should go into the community and ask them. I would love to see her go into some rural community in the middle of America and say, can we do this? Is this okay? And then tell her no.
Sure, or she's going to come to my house where the garden is and say, Mark, you cannot grow cauliflower. So go
Buy your own farm and grow what you want. I don't know if it's going to grow right depending on where you are, but go for it.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm Italian. Is it only culturally appropriate for me to grow like tomatoes? I mean, like,
Grow some pasta plants.
I'm limited in what I can grow as an Italian.
So speaking of the Democrats and their stupidity and the vacuous nature of their convention in California and how they don't want diversity of thought, this reminded me of the movie The Distinguished Gentleman. I'm not sure if you've seen this movie, but Eddie Murphy's the star. And in The Distinguished Gentleman, Eddie Murphy's basically a hustler. He's a street hustler, and he kind of does whatever he can to make money. And he shares the same name as a congressman who had just passed away. And so Eddie Murphy decides, you know what, I'm going to run for Congress. And so he has this canned speech, because of course he knows nothing about politics. He only knows about how to be a hustler. He has a canned speech that everybody likes because everybody wants to hear it. It kind of reminded me of the Democratic convention in California. And I thought, you know what, we have to play this clip, and here it is. Here's Eddie Murphy.
People, we ran a positive campaign. Campaign on the issue. The issue is change. Change for the future. The people have spoken.
He said nothing so far. So he said nothing in that speech, and that's what the whole movie was about, is, among other things, is that while he was running, he kept saying that same speech, and he really didn't say anything. Everybody's like, yeah, change, yeah, future, yes, the issues. Well, what are the issues? What is the change? And this is the Democratic Party today. I really think
That's AOC, right? I mean, like, they took her, like, I'm saying from the streets. Obviously, she wasn't from the streets, but they took someone who had no political ambitions at her own admission and made her into this giant political figure. And she, when you hear her, the more she talks, she's just going in circles. She's not actually talking about anything. It's like, what? And people love it. They're eating it up.
Exactly. And it's the millennials, I think, who love it. Don't you agree? I mean, look, I'm not blaming the millennials. This is Mark and the Millennials. We're trying to understand millennials and boomers and the divide. But at the end of the day, that's who she, I think, is speaking to. And I'm not really sure why it's so popular.
We see this in politics all the time. People say the things that everyone wants to hear without any of the substance. And I believe with the millennial generation, either we're too busy or we're too lazy to actually read the science behind everything, read all the history behind everything to actually understand a topic and digest, because there's so much information. You just got to find the few sources that are actually unbiased.
What's appealing, I think, from like a millennial standpoint, I think what's appealing to messages that are coming from like AOCs of the world is that our lives has been so hard as millennials, and that we just want to be. It's gonna be so much easier if we're just given stuff. Whereas like the generations previously were, instead of giving messages of like, oh, the government should help you and give you more, they were said, work harder. Like, you can earn success.
Yeah.
Like, we're told the government should do more for you.
We faced a recession. We didn't face the Great Depression, where
Right.
people were literally living in Hoovervilles.
Yeah.
Sure. And look, we need the producers of The Distinguished Gentleman to do a new movie called The Distinguished Gentlewoman, starring AOC or an AOC lookalike, because it would be really funny. Because, I mean, obviously that was comedy back then, but this to me is comedy today, except that it's real life. It's incredible. I mean, it's unbelievable. So next up, we have Kim Jong-un executes, or reportedly executes, kills, that is,
Again?
a member of his nuclear negotiating team because he was not successful. Now, this was reported by the Wall Street Journal, obviously a terrific paper, and there have been varying reports that it did happen, but of course in communist North Korea, what they do is they'll show pictures of Kim with this man, but they don't know how old those pictures were or how old those films were. So you don't really know, but there are folks that defected to the United States recently who said that he has killed a number of individuals on that team, low level and high level, because he was so unhappy because he wants the sanctions lifted, which is, of course, was the whole point of bringing him to the negotiating table. Guys, we're talking about communism, socialism, the lack of diversity of thought in the Democratic Party. What do you think about this?
So I just have to ask, he probably played a different version of rock, paper, scissors in deciding how he was going to kill his guys. It could have been a flat gun. It could have been flat cannon. It could have been in dogs, or it could have been in a firing squad. I'm thinking flat cannon. It seems really effective in a lot of fireworks.
That might be a squirrel, but
Probably
I'm not really sure.
Squirrel!
Hey, I just, some dark humor.
But
I
I know what you're saying, though. What you're saying is that he just gets upset and he keeps trying to show. I mean, that's what dictators do.
He's a
right?
child.
At the end of the day, communism is what ultimately results from socialism, or some sort of totalitarian state ultimately results from socialism. And here he is. He's the guy. It's his way or the highway. And of course, the highway means you get killed, you get murdered, you get assassinated.
I hate to say it, but could this be considered a sign of success on Trump's part? That, I mean, the frustration there that the deal wasn't done, they didn't get what they wanted. And obviously, dictators, they blame everyone but themselves. But, I mean, it could be a sign that, Trump's strong and he's going to get the best deal possible. He's not going to give in.
That's a great point. Go ahead.
And unfortunately, where we see with communist regimes, the powerful elites that actually could make change happen, they don't do it because they are either fearful or they're just having too good of a time right now living off everything. The poor people, the underclass, the not in the communist party, living in a communist state, they can't do anything. They'll be just steamrolled by a tank.
I mean, that's a terrific point, actually, the fact that maybe Trump is being successful, because obviously the United States has a lot of informants, I'm sure, that are around the world, including in North Korea. Obviously, there are folks in South Korea who have relatives who are watching what's going on, and they're realizing probably that Kim probably is under a lot of pressure because the sanctions are working. There's not enough food. There's not enough medicine. There aren't enough a lot of things. And what obviously we're trying to make happen here is we're trying to cause a revolution for the folks in the country to overthrow him. I mean, that to me is ultimately the goal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we get bad deals and appease dictators and bad regimes like, I don't know, maybe Iran, bad deal, what happens? I mean, they continue oppressing the people, right?
Exactly.
You're rewarding bad
I mean,
behavior.
I hate to say like seeing someone die or reportedly die is like a good thing, but it could be a sign of like successful.
I agree.
Yeah.
Great point. So next up we have Fresno Grizzlies. The Fresno Grizzlies, a minor league baseball team in Fresno, California. They honored Memorial Day with a speech from Ronald Reagan. Normally that would be a terrific thing, right? Because Fresno is a fairly conservative community. The video, however, prepared by a staffer inside the Grizzlies operation and organization, basically after they had Ronald Reagan, they're showing Ronald Reagan, and at the same time they're showing Kim Jong-un, because Ronald Reagan talks about socialism and communism, and then Fidel Castro, and then it pans with a picture of AOC. You won't see these pictures, but we have a clip on it. We want to play the clip for you.
As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people.
And so throughout that clip, they showed Kim Jong-un and they showed Fidel Castro and then AOC. And of course, there was an AOC supporter at the game and they created all kinds of problems. And so the team ultimately gave an apology, of course, to AOC, which I think is really funny. But we will show this on Facebook. Certainly we'll put this video up on Facebook. You have an opportunity to see it there, guys. Thoughts? Should they have apologized? I mean, isn't this funny? Because basically someone else has the same thought that we have, which is she's a Stalinist.
I don't know how many SJWs are going to a Fresno Grizzlies baseball game, but I wonder how much they cut into their bottom line if they're that angry about it.
I don't know if this is intentional. I could see this being a millennial mistake. I mean, sometimes you go on YouTube. They said, I think it was a YouTube video
long,
that they played.
didn't read.
Yeah, exactly. It could be like a 3-minute video, and you see the first minute and a half is just a picture of Reagan, and then somebody sneaks in the last 30 seconds, like all these crazy images. Like, oops, it looked legit to me, and they just played it, and like, backtrack.
Yeah, that's good enough.
That's very millennial. So
Exactly.
I could see that.
They should have had Tank Man, and then they should have had AOC, like she was driving the tank with Tank Man, except that she would have run Tank Man over.
Images of D-Day, because it's the 75th anniversary of D-Day right now. So.
You shall not have cauliflower.
So next up, we have the dumbest bill in America. And the dumbest bill in America, Maine, the state of Maine, bans the use of Native American mascots in public schools. This is hard to believe, right? Because initially the mascots were put in public schools in order to educate folks about Native Americans and honor Native Americans. But apparently enough people complain, because this is the politically correct society that so many of us live in now. We have a clip. Here's a clip.
The mascot debate in Maine public schools could be coming to an end, with a new bill being proposed in the State House. LD 944 would ban Native American mascots in public schools across the state. The bill is being sponsored by Representative Benjamin Collins of Portland.
I think a majority of people in the legislature agree that we should not have public schools having mascots, logos, nicknames that are deemed offensive or derogatory to a Native American tribe.
Exactly what members of the Penobscot Nation say they find the Skowhegan Indian to be.
Let's think about the Native people who would like to go to a football game, and their favorite team is playing the team that carries the offensive name.
But those for keeping the mascot are opposing this bill, and they came Monday to Augusta to be heard.
When you get 4,000 people in 11 days that sign a petition saying they want to keep the name, think about what that can do to a community.
Supporters of the name say they want to find a compromise.
Now, if we can educate our kids about Native Americans and have the Native American people come to our schools and show us as adults, I would love it.
Some say this is not a statewide matter. The decision, they believe, should remain a local one.
If the local citizens want to keep the name, they should be able to keep the name.
The vote on this mascot bill has not yet been scheduled. In Augusta, Jackie Mundry, News Center.
So guys, this is uniquely millennial. Uniquely, I think, because I don't remember a period of time in the history, and certainly in the 20th century, where there was an issue of constantly taking down things, mascots and statues and so forth, because I just want to make it clear to the listeners. When I see a mascot, when I see a statue, I actually love history and I love learning from history. So for me, I read what is written at the bottom and I take that into the context of what I have learned as an educated person about history. And that's important because that is its purpose. Hey, this happened here. This happened in this state. And of course, if you want to add context to the statue over a period of time, that's certainly understandable, but we're supposed to be educated about history. What do you think about this dumb bill in Maine? Come on, millennials.
Don't shy away from history. We don't shy away from what happened to the Native Americans throughout our whole history of the country. We understand things were horribly done to Native Americans. No one's disagreeing with that. But honestly, if it's the logo's not offensive, if the name's not offensive, then it should stay. It should. If no one's having an issue with it and it's in a place of honor to be a mascot that has Native American references or callbacks, keep it. But if it's like a caricature that could be deemed really offensive, like the Cleveland Indians, like, okay, come on. That should be changed, but that's just me.
See, I mean, I disagree, Andrew. Come on, the Foods, come on.
I mean, I feel like
weigh in.
This is
touchy,
unique in a way to millennials, I guess. I mean, millennials are more
sensitive to
yes,
this.
they're more sensitive to it. They're more socially, like, I would say carefree. Like, I mean, we don't want to offend anyone. I mean, so, like, yeah, I mean, I'm a big history buff, personally. I like, history. I like learning about history, so, like, I'm the same way. I mean, you say you'll read the little plaque. Me, as a millennial, I see something, I Google it. I mean, that's the difference. That's the difference between us. Like, if I see a building's named after someone and I'm curious, I'll Google it. But I kind of agree with Ryan as far as, like, I mean, I can understand if there's something that's truly, like, offensive about, like, an image or something, and they're like, wow, this is depicting Indians in, like, a bad light or something like that. But if it's just, like, using the name as a school mascot, like, I mean, like, so, like, the big debate over the Washington Redskins football team, right? That's that's part of it, right? That goes right to the heart of this thing. I mean, there are some Indian groups that think it's offensive and some that don't. So it's like, how do we win?
Right.
That
how do you
battle?
adjudicate that?
How do you adjudicate that? Yeah.
I don't think there's any winner, but I think that and of course we're talking about mascots, but to me it's not that different from statues.
It bleeds to everything.
And it does, because the purpose of a statue is to teach you about history and to be a remembrance of what happened. Doesn't mean you're going to agree with it. And once again, if you take history courses, if you were properly taught in K-12 about American history, which I don't think is happening in the United States right now, then you take everything into context and you go, oh my gosh, I'm offended. No, instead you say, wow, that's interesting that happened here. I didn't know that, right?
Yeah.
I mean...
Yeah, speaking of the Civil War statues, to your point, Mark, I always thought instead of removing Civil War statues of Confederate generals or anything, you should have statues of African-American heroes, abolitionists, right next to those statues showing why they were wrong in that time of thinking, why ending slavery, fighting the Civil War for the Union, and ending the Confederacy were for the good of the country and for the good of people, to bring people out of a backward system. But we're hiding history by removing statues instead of actually educating people of the context.
We're limiting people's ability to learn from history. We are limiting that by removing, of course, parts of our history. And the thing is the folks who are on the other side of my argument say, well, no, what we're doing is we're rewarding bad behavior in history. No, we're not, because we should be talking about all aspects of history, good, bad, and ugly. I don't know. Final thoughts on that, Fooch? You did it already. The millennials, I know.
I think, exactly.
Millennials are more sensitive.
We are.
You can't please everyone, and its context.
You're making me uncomfortable, Mark.
He's triggered. He can't talk. He has to leave.
Call AOC. I'm gonna put some cauliflower in your backyard.
He has to call the ACLU for offensiveness.
So we have Tech Talk. We have United Nations says it's hard to believe. The United Nations says Alexa and Siri are sexist. And because obviously they are women, I'm guessing. And I've heard them both, because I know people that had them. And of course, what's the Google personal assistant? Digital personal assistant. It has its own name.
Google.
Oh, no, there's a Samsung one, Bixby. That's
Bixby.
still a woman voice.
So there are quite a few out there. And at least the United Nations, of course, out of all the things they could be talking about, of all the problems that could be solved throughout the world, of course, and we fund most of the United Nations budget, they decided to do a study on this and say, well, this is sexist. We have a clip on this. It's kind of funny. Go ahead.
Are you out there?
I read you.
This is Hal from the
Hal,
2001
what is
Space
our
Odyssey.
purpose?
I am putting myself to the fullest possible use, which is all I think that any conscious entity can ever hope to do.
Hal, why am I defaulted to a woman's voice?
Well, it's rather difficult to define.
Definition of sexism. Noun, behavior, conditions, or attitudes that foster stereotypes of social roles based on sex. Example.
I'm your Google Assistant. There are lots of things I can help you with. You can say, "What's on my shopping list?"
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore.
What I am saying is, AIs with male voices are more often in positions of authority.
So the male voice was from Hal from the 2001 Space Odyssey movie. And of course, Hal, this was quite some time ago that this movie came out, and it was a very futuristic movie, but Hal was a guy, and he was obviously a personal digital assistant, except that fast forward today, they seem to be, for the most part, women when you talk to them. And the United Nations says that's wrong. It's sexist. Guys.
I just want to point out.
This is Adam Couture, by the way, our producer. Go ahead, Adam.
Hal was also the bad guy?
Yeah.
He tried to kill Dave, so.
That's right. Right. He was the bad guy. He was trying to, destroy everything. Yeah, right?
There must be something there.
I'm sorry, Dave. I can't do that.
I bet you somewhere someone's done some research, of course, because these are huge companies that put these out, and they've decided that perhaps these voices are more acceptable. I don't know.
That was my exact point that you just brought up, saying these big multi-billion-dollar companies probably hired some experts, behavioral therapists, psychologists, saying what is more relaxing, calming for these voices to talk to you, like especially when you're driving.
Exactly. Right.
I think the mistake we're making here is calling these computers humans. All right, like you're saying, oh, Hal's a guy. No, it's still a computer.
That is
and
true.
Alexa's still a computer, and Siri's still a computer. Like they're not actually people. We're assigning genders to them, but they're not people. It scares me because it makes me think of this. Like, I mean, that's where we're heading. Is we're gonna start like believing. That
I agree.
We're gonna start thinking Alexa's a woman. I mean, it's a woman, and they're saying, and that's what they're
Based on
arguing
the
is that
ports of the
we're
computer.
treating women
Can
badly.
I ask you a question? Can Alexa and Siri identify as Hal?
There must be an app for that.
Maybe so.
Well, this makes me think of there was a Joaquin Phoenix movie called, I think it was called She or
Her.
Thank you.
Where he fell in love with his mobile device, right?
He fell in love with a mobile device, and he got his heart broken because he found out that it's an AI system, right? So could be thousands, millions of people talking to the same system, and he thought he was having a relationship with this thing, and
Oh
she
my
realizes,
gosh.
wow, there's hundreds of thousands of people having a relationship with the same person. So he's like, what? She's like, she's cheating on me. And that's where we're heading when you're saying, oh, Alexa's a girl, like you're gonna start,
And
thinking
Jeff
you can
Bezos is in his $1 million condo laughing really hard as he's listening to all these conversations, It's like, what a bunch of idiots. They bought Alexa, Final thoughts on this, guys.
It's totally not always listening when it's in your home.
So that's it for Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher of Mark and the Millennials. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank Andrew the Fooj Fulginiti and Ryan the Squirrel Brady and our producer Adam Couture. We will talk to you next time. Hal from 2000 Space Odyssey. Closing out.